Rejection usually sounds just like a word, but anyone who's felt it knows it's a wound. It doesn't cut the skin, it cuts your sense of worth. It starts early. A classroom laugh, a turned back, a message left unseen, and somewhere deep inside, you start to believe there's something wrong with me. You begin to shapeshift, to please, to perform, to belong. You silence parts of yourself just to be accepted by others who never really saw you. Carl Jung once said that the greatest tragedy of the human soul is the unlived life, the version of you that never came to be because you feared being rejected for who you truly are. He called it a barrier to self-realization. And that's where most people stay trapped behind invisible bars. Not a prison of steel, but of perception. The fear of rejection becomes the silent architect of their choices, their relationships, their dreams. Think about it. How many times have you held your tongue when you wanted to speak? How many times have you played small to stay safe? How many times have you mistaken approval for love? But here's the truth no one tells you. When you stop fearing rejection, something extraordinary happens. The walls that kept you safe start to crumble, and behind them, you find you. The real you. The one who doesn't beg to be chosen because they finally choose themselves. This isn't about arrogance or rebellion. It's about freedom, the kind Jung believed was at the heart of human evolution. Freedom from the masks. Freedom from the expectations. Freedom from the silent terror of not being enough. Because when you stop fearing rejection, you stop living on other people's terms. And that's when everything, your confidence, your purpose, your entire reality begins to change. Chapter 1. The Invisible Cage. It begins quietly, not with cruelty, but with moments so small they almost go unnoticed. A sigh when we disappoint someone we love. A teacher's frown. A parent's silence when we speak a little too loudly or dream a little too big. In those moments, a seed is planted, the belief that love and acceptance must be earned. We start shaping ourselves to fit what others want to see. We trade spontaneity for approval. We hide our curiosity behind good manners. And slowly, without realizing it, we build an invisible cage around who we are. This is where fear of rejection takes root, not as a conscious decision, but as a survival strategy. We learn that acceptance is conditional, that belonging can be withdrawn, that the slightest disapproval means something is wrong with us. So, we begin to live not as ourselves, but as a performance of who we think the world wants us to be. Carl Jung saw this fear as a silent assassin of the soul. He believed it splits us in two, the self we show the world and the self we truly are. He called this false version the persona, a mask meant to protect us, but one that eventually imprisons us. And here's the most painful truth. We unknowingly pass this fear to the next generation. When we criticize instead of guide, when we compare instead of celebrate, when we make love feel like a reward instead of a constant, we plant that same seed of rejection in our children's hearts. We teach them to fear being different, when difference is what makes them divine. But we can break this cycle. It begins when we see how deep this fear runs, how it shaped our words, our tone, our silence. It begins when we decide that our children will not have to earn their worth. That love will not depend on behavior, grades, or perfection, but simply on being. Because the moment we stop fearing rejection ourselves, we stop teaching it. And that's when something powerful begins to shift. A family, a soul, a generation finally learning what freedom feels like. Chapter 2. The Price of Approval. There's a strange kind of silence that follows people who live for approval. They laugh at the right time, say the right words, wear the right smiles, and yet, deep down, they feel unseen. It's the silence that comes when life becomes a performance and the stage never closes. We all crave belonging, It's written into our biology. The human brain is wired to seek safety and connection. To be accepted by the tribe meant survival. But somewhere along the way, survival became identity. We started to confuse approval with love. And that confusion comes at a heavy cost. To be liked, we begin editing ourselves. We sand down our edges. We hide opinions that might make others uncomfortable. We say yes when our entire body is screaming no. At first, it seems harmless, a compromise for peace. But over time, those little compromises stack up. They pile into something heavy, a version of yourself that exists only to be accepted. Carl Jung called this version the persona, the social mask we wear to meet the world. It's not a lie, not exactly. It's a partial truth. The problem begins when the mask becomes fused to the face. When you no longer remember where the performance ends and where you begin. Jung warned that the more we invest in this mask, the deeper the split grows between who we are and who we pretend to be. On the surface, we appear confident, agreeable, successful. But underneath, behind the compliments, the curated photos, the polite smiles, there's a quiet ache. A sense of self-betrayal. This betrayal doesn't come with a dramatic breakdown. It creeps in gently. It shows up as exhaustion, not the kind that sleep can fix, but the kind that comes from constant pretending. It shows up as resentment toward the very people we've tried so hard to please. Because the truth is, every yes that goes against your truth is a no to yourself. And the more we say no to ourselves, the emptier life becomes even when it looks full. You start to wonder, if everyone likes me, but I don't like myself, have I really won anything? This is the hidden price of approval, authenticity traded for belonging. It's the deal too many of us make without realizing it. And the moment we begin to see that trade for what it is, something shifts. Because awareness is the first crack in the mask. And once it cracks, truth starts to seep through. What would happen if, instead of asking, will they like me, we began asking, do I like who I am when I'm with them? That single question can change the entire trajectory of a life. Because true belonging doesn't require pretending. It requires presence. And that's the real freedom Jung spoke of. The courage to live unmasked, even if it means standing alone for a while. Because that's not loneliness, it's alignment. If this chapter spoke to you, let other viewers know in the comments. If you're enjoying this video so far, go ahead and click the subscribe button below. You can even click on our profile image to explore more of our past content. There's plenty waiting for you. Chapter 3. The Mirror of the Shadow. There comes a point in life when the enemy we've been running from suddenly looks a lot like us. Not the polished version, not the one we post, present, or protect, but the one we try to hide. The one that carries our anger, jealousy, insecurity, pride, everything we've labeled as unacceptable. Carl Jung called this hidden self the shadow. It's made up of everything we deny or repress in order to be loved, accepted, or approved of. When we were children, the world showed us through punishment, ridicule, or silence which parts of us were wrong. We learned quickly that some emotions were too much, some desires too selfish, some truths too uncomfortable. So we buried them. But buried things don't disappear. They wait. The shadow doesn't vanish. When we ignore it, it grows stronger. It seeps into our lives in disguised forms. The friend we secretly envy, the people we judge harshly, the triggers that make us react out of proportion. Every time we condemn something in someone else, it's often the part of ourselves we can't face. In trying to escape rejection, we become our own rejectors. It's a cruel paradox. We hide pieces of ourselves to be accepted by others, yet in doing so, we reject ourselves first. We build a life that looks right from the outside, but internally feels incomplete, as if a vital part of our spirit has been exiled. Jung believed that true freedom, real wholeness, only begins when we look into this mirror, when we dare to meet the shadow without judgment. He said that confronting the shadow is not about glorifying darkness, it's about integrating it. Because light without darkness isn't completeness, it's blindness. Think of it like a house you've lived in your whole life, but never explored fully. There's a locked room at the end of the hall, and inside, it is everything you've avoided. Your anger, your shame, your pain, your unspoken desires. You keep the door closed because you're afraid of what you'll find. But that's the room that holds your power. Every piece you disowned is still part of your strength, waiting to be reclaimed. And when you finally open that door, when you face what you've been hiding, something remarkable happens. You stop fighting yourself. You stop needing others to validate you because you've accepted the parts you once believed made you unlovable. The enemy you feared turns out to be your teacher. This is what Jung meant by individuation, the process of becoming whole, not perfect. To look into the mirror of your shadow and realize that what you feared most was never meant to be destroyed. It was meant to be understood. And in that understanding, you begin to feel something profound, not fear, but peace. Because once you stop running from yourself, no one can use rejection to control you ever again. Chapter 4. Breaking the Spell. There's a moment, somewhere between exhaustion and awakening, when you start to question everything you've been taught to fear. It doesn't come with fireworks or fanfare. It arrives quietly, in a pause, a sigh, a sudden thought that feels almost forbidden. What if the rejection I've been running from was never real to begin with? For years, fear of disapproval has shaped our steps, what we say, who we love, what we dare to dream. We've built invisible fences around our lives, mistaking safety for peace. But peace built on fear isn't peace at all. It's submission to an illusion. Carl Jung wrote that every human being carries two tasks in life: to adapt to society and to become oneself. Most people master the first and never attempt the second, because the second requires rebellion not against others, but against the lies we tell ourselves to stay comfortable. The spell begins to break the moment we see the fear for what it truly is: a projection, not a prison. The opinions we dread are shadows on the wall, enlarged by our imagination, not by truth. Rejection doesn't define us. Our reaction to it does. And that reaction is something we can reclaim. Imagine standing in front of a mirror, fogged by years of conditioning. Every should, every judgment, every label smudging the glass. For the first time, you take a breath and wipe it clean. You see yourself, not the persona, not the performance, but the raw, unfiltered being beneath. It's uncomfortable, even frightening. But in that reflection, you recognize something you haven't felt in years: clarity. Clarity that you've spent too long living in negotiation with your own truth. Clarity that authenticity isn't granted, it's chosen. And no one else can choose it for you. This is where courage enters. Not the loud, heroic kind, but the quiet, steady kind. The courage to speak even when your voice shakes, to stand by your truth even when it costs you comfort. It's the courage Jung believed was necessary for individuation, for becoming who you truly are, not who the world expects you to be. The spell of fear doesn't shatter all at once. It cracks each time you say no when you mean no, each time you stop apologizing for existing, each time you realize rejection from others can never wound you more deeply than self-abandonment. And slowly, the illusion fades. You stop looking for mirrors in other people's eyes. You stop waiting for permission to be yourself. Because you finally understand you were never imprisoned by rejection. You were imprisoned by the belief that you needed to be accepted to be whole. When that belief dies, freedom begins. If this chapter moved you, write in the comments. What is one illusion or fear you're ready to break free from today? Chapter 5. Becoming Whole. There comes a quiet turning point. Not loud, not dramatic, when you stop striving to become someone better and begin remembering who you've always been. The battles you've fought, the masks you've worn, the fears you've faced, all of them have been leading you here, to the moment you realize wholeness was never about perfection. It was about integration. Carl Jung believed that true growth doesn't come from eliminating our flaws, but from uniting all that we are: the light, the shadow, the wounds, the wisdom. He called it individuation, the lifelong process of becoming a complete, authentic human being. To become whole is to no longer divide yourself into acceptable and unacceptable. It's to see that every emotion, every impulse, every contradiction within you belongs, and that belonging starts from the inside out. For so long, fear of rejection has made us cut pieces of ourselves away like sculptors trying to please invisible critics. But the masterpiece was never meant to be chiseled down. It was meant to be revealed. The parts we buried in shame, our sensitivity, our ambition, our anger, our need, they are not mistakes. They are the raw materials of strength, empathy, and clarity. To deny them is to deny the full spectrum of what it means to be human. Think of wholeness like the merging of sunlight and shadow at dawn. Not one erasing the other, but both, giving the world its depth and color. When you accept your darkness, you stop fearing its return. When you make peace with your past, it stops chasing you. And when you no longer divide yourself, rejection loses its power because there is nothing left within you to reject. People may still misunderstand you, criticize you, even walk away. But you'll notice something different. Their opinions no longer feel like verdicts. They're just reflections of their own stories, not definitions of yours. You stop living for acceptance because you already belong to yourself. And that's the heart of it. Wholeness isn't the absence of struggle, it's the presence of alignment. It's waking up in the morning and knowing that, even if no one applauds, you are still proud of who you are. It's speaking with honesty instead of calculation. It's loving without pretending. It's standing in your truth not to be admired, but because you can finally breathe there. Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." That privilege isn't earned by becoming perfect. It's claimed the moment you stop hiding, stop fragmenting, and begin to live as a whole, unified being. Because once you become whole, rejection no longer defines you, love no longer blinds you, and fear no longer confines you. You simply are. And that quiet, unshakable peace is what freedom feels like. Life after fear. There comes a quiet moment after all the noise of pleasing, defending, and proving when something inside you finally exhales. You've spent so long building yourself around other people's acceptance that when you stop, the silence feels almost sacred. And in that silence, something shifts. You start seeing the world differently, not through the lens of, will they like me? But through the calm question, do I like this? Do I like me? When fear no longer rules you, your relationships transform first. You stop chasing people who make you small. You stop performing for love and start offering it freely, without the hunger of needing it back. Those who once drained you drift away, and those who truly see you find their way closer. Your creativity blooms again, not because you're fearless, but because you finally stopped asking permission to exist. You realize that your ideas don't need to be perfect to be shared. They just need to be yours. And purpose, the thing we spend our whole lives searching for. It doesn't come from applause or validation. It comes quietly, from the moments you choose truth over comfort, and courage over conformity. Confidence rises too, but it's different this time. It's not loud, not polished. It's not built on comparison or control. It's a steady flame, the kind that doesn't flicker when the wind changes. You begin to connect with others in a new way, from honesty, not obligation. People feel it. They sense it. They're not drawn to your perfection anymore, but to your presence, to the grounded stillness that says, I know who I am. I don't need you to confirm it. And perhaps the greatest revelation of all, rejection isn't a punishment. It's a compass, a redirection towards something or someone that fits your truth more deeply. Every no becomes a cleansing, a gentle hand removing what you no longer need to carry. Because when you stop fearing rejection, you don't become invincible. You become real. And that's where true power begins. So here you are no longer asking for space, but creating it. No longer shrinking to be loved, but expanding to love yourself. The fear didn't vanish. You just stopped giving it the microphone. And in that stillness, life finally starts to move with you. Not because you've conquered rejection, but because you've learned the art of not rejecting yourself. This is where the story turns. From fear to freedom, from seeking approval to standing in truth. And that is the moment you become unshakable.